a lot of our personal time to get into. My thing is software. Chris is empanada. Brandon Aydlett over at the National Weather Service is weather systems. So when it comes to this weird weather we are having, why Mr. Sun did not show his face as he normally does, we of course go to the experts. So Brandon, half a day. Good morning.
Half a day. Good morning, Jason, and it's great to be back with you this morning. How is everybody doing?
We're doing okay. It's a little cold in the studio, given the conditions and everything, but we've had some really odd weather recently. As far as your projections and everything like that, was any of this unexpected?
Well, we've been in this kind of a monsoon pattern for much of the past almost 2 weeks now. And so we've been kind of highlighting a wet trend expected as early as yesterday, but conditions kind of slowed down in their development and ultimately waited until last night and to today to really come in force. This is typical of the southwesterly monsoon. And of course, we've been seeing off and on pretty wet weather for much of the past week. We even issued a couple of flood advisories in the past couple of days when we had some lighter winds and the daytime heating of the island. And in those conditions, we see very heavy showers develop over maybe just small localized areas of the island and kind of lead to flooding conditions, while other areas might be just either partly cloudy or have a little bit of sun and somewhat dry. But now we're seeing the pattern completely switch over to just a very wet period for all of the Marianas and the surrounding region. But let me go ahead and just slide right into the radar imagery. And so many of us have not heard the mention of the radar in quite a while. We're very happy to report we've had a radar team from Oklahoma. They've been on island for a while, and they have completed some pretty big repairs on the radar. And so we're very happy to show this nice piece of technology. It is excellent for diagnosing the heavy rain locations, where the stronger winds are, and giving us a little bit more of an insight into the storm development. But you can see right here, Guam is right in the center, where we've had some heavy showers passing by. We've got some lightning detections off of Retidian, just offshore east of Anderson Air Force Base as well. But right now, the heavier showers are to the west of Guam, but still affecting the northern Mariana Islands. So we are actually considering issuance of a new urban and small stream flood advisory for Rota, Tinian, and Saipan. We saw heavier showers early this morning over Guam that prompted one flood advisory, and it's just been ongoing rain. And so let me switch over to satellite real quick, get the bird's eye view, and you can see this big, massive walloping of moisture across the Marianas from just northeast of Yap and Palau, extending all the way across the Marianas, and then out to another broad circulation between the Marianas and Wake Island. So here's Wake Island. Let me slide over. Wake Island, the Marianas, and a circulation that we're watching for some gradual development in the coming days. The key thing to remember, though, is the circulation will continue northward. So whether it develops or not is not going to really have any significant impacts on the local weather. And so if you'd like, let's go ahead into these slides.
Absolutely.
And let's go ahead and talk the weather and what we've been seeing the past several days. And so let me just make sure Jason has switched those over.
Yep, good to go.
And I'm going to have my own copy. So here we go. Let's talk about the headlines. Today, the main concern is potential for some flooding. So we've had urban and small stream flood advisories throughout the morning hours. And that is going to continue as we see these heavy showers continuing to push to the northeast from the southwest. Currently, no flood advisories for Guam, although we will be continually monitoring things. How about the seas and surf and winds? Well, we're going to see the southwest winds increasing just a little bit more today. They've been somewhat subdued the past couple of days, but we're going to see the conditions becoming a little bit breezier for the next couple of days. The seas and surf will also begin to respond, building from the west-northwest, and we're going to be coming close to those 10-foot levels that are hazardous for small craft. But right now, the computer models suggest seas will stay just below those levels. In the long term, we could be seeing some easterly trade winds filtering back into the Marianas, and more about that later. For Micronesia region, things are pretty quiet. Where the monsoon is, that's all your activity, and the monsoon has lifted has remained over the Philippine Sea up to our northwest, and that has opened up the door for pretty placid weather across much of Micronesia. Next slide, please. So coming in early this morning to the weather office, we had I love cloudy,
very
dreary
cool
weather. It was beautiful this morning. So that's our backyard. That satellite pointing up is just not necessarily just collecting the rainfall, but it's statically positioned in that direction to retrieve our geostationary satellite imagery from the Himawari satellite provided by Japan. And so we're always, through that satellite, that is how we get our bird's eye view to see what's going on across the Western Pacific. Without that and radar, we would pretty much be blind to current conditions. But some amazing cloud cover this morning, some heavy showers in Tumon. I was drinking my coffee before it had gotten any brighter with the sunrise. And I saw a couple of little brownouts in my apartment. And then I heard a bzz, and there went a transformer. So that means it's raining hard. So how much rain have we had? Next slide. I went ahead and got some preliminary rain amounts. There's a number of USGS rain gauges scattered about the island. And so for the past week, the past 7 days, including the most recent 24 hours, we've seen a good spread of 4 to 6 inches of rain across much of the island. That's pretty impressive rain amounts for 1 week. And even in the past 24 hours, those numbers in the green, those are showing you that we've had anywhere from, most of the island has seen 1 to 2 inches of rain in the past 24 hours, much of that falling last night and early this morning. But where do we stand in concerning the year and the month? July was a little bit dry. We were a deficit of 3.5 inches for the month of July. But also for the full year through January 1st through July 31st, we're still dry, about almost 7.25 inches. But August seems to be trying to account for that and get us a little bit back on par. So let's go to the next slide and we'll take a look at the full picture. So this is just a very rough sketch surface analysis across the region. You can see right across Guam, the Marianas, down southwestward toward Yap and Palau. All that white cloud cover, that is just courtesy of the southwesterly monsoon. I know last week I showed you another surface analysis, and over the Philippine Sea from Taiwan to the northwest of the far northern Marianas up toward Japan, we saw this massive broad monsoon trough across the region. And that is a notorious generator of tropical cyclones. We continue to see several circulations spin off in that area. And the Joint Typhoon Warning Center is watching several of them. One to our northeast, that is Joint Typhoon Warning Center Invest Area 98 Whiskey and 98W. They have issued a tropical cyclone formation alert for that system, meaning that there's a good chance of that becoming a tropical depression in the next 24 hours. Additionally, much farther to the north of the Marianas, a 96W is also expected to develop into a tropical depression as it heads northward. The good thing to keep in mind is that all of this tropical cyclone development that we could see in the next week is expected to stay north of the Marianas. And eventually, these southwesterly wind flows will lift up to the northwest. Across Micronesia, you see various dry, stable conditions from Chute, Pohnpei eastward. And that ridge is expected to gradually slide into the Marianas around mid-late week. And that is what could bring us some easterly winds by late week. So let's go ahead and look at the next 7 days. Wet, wet, wet for the next 2 days. But we're going to see some slow drying take place Tuesday night into Wednesday.
That's a scientific term for it, right? Wet, wet, wet.
Wet, wet, wet. It is capital, underlined, italicized, wet. So our lead forecaster overnight, Paul Stinko, he went ahead and just put us a full 100% walloping of showers for today. It's just going to be wet. Have an umbrella. Wear that jacket because as you go into the air-conditioned buildings, it's going to be just miserably cold. It was for me this morning walking into the weather office. But late week, again, we could see some drying with those easterly trades coming back in. And how about sea conditions? I mentioned we're going to stay just shy of small craft advisory conditions, but we're going to see that west-northwest swell in the combined seas picking up today, rising up to about 6 to 8 feet combined seas, 5 to 7 foot out of the west-northwest swell. And that's also going to have some impacts on surf heights, especially on the west-facing reefs. So stronger rip currents. We don't have any high risk of rip currents or hazardous surf currently, but we're going to be watching that very closely. So if you do have any water plans, well, you're already going to be wet in the rain, but any marine-based water plans, definitely take caution and always use the buddy system. By Wednesday, we're going to see those trends slightly coming down, and coming down Wednesday into Thursday, winds, seas, and swell decreasing. I include tides down on the bottom right. We have our low tide coming up this morning at 9:15, and then our next high tide around 4:30 this afternoon. And so let's go to the next slide. And I want to highlight August 2nd to 8th is Earthquake Preparedness Week. We just got some emails from the Office of Civil Defense. And this is a really good time to consider Earthquake Preparedness Week. This is in remembrance of the 1993, I believe it was a 7.8 earthquake that struck Guam August 3rd or August 8th of 1993.
I thought it was like 8.1 somewhere around there.
Yeah, 7.8, 8.1. And it was pretty strong. It left, actually, we were talking with our some of our coworkers yesterday, and they vividly remember the palm trees just shaking and swinging, and just kind of a jaw-dropping experience for those who encountered that event. But this is part of the Guam Homeland Security Office of Civil Defense, and basically, what would you do? How do you react in the case of an earthquake? Where do you evacuate to? And then keep in mind that if there's a big earthquake, there might be a tsunami. How do you respond to the threat of a tsunami? Last week, we had the scare with the big earthquake off of Alaska. And so we had a lot of commentary on our Facebook page. What do we need to do? Should we be doing anything? And so there's going to be information about that. Make sure you and your family stay safe, understand what to do in the event of a disaster. And some web links below are great places to start your search for finding those answers. And of course, you can always send us a message online. Now, I know we were also had this another scare with Pagan volcano just last week. And I'll show you once I get control of the camera shortly, I'll show you kind of how we monitor for the volcano. But just for my last slide, always stay up to date with the latest forecasts at our webpage, weather.gov/gum, or find us on Facebook or Twitter under NWS Guam. And we'll be posting updates. Our webpage is updated with forecast at least 12 hours, every 12 hours. And then as things change and threaten, we'll be posting important information to the Facebook page. But that's it with my slides. But let me show you one more satellite imagery, a little bit more satellite imagery of what we use to monitor for volcanic hotspots. There is always the consideration, the Marianas being quite seismically and volcanically active, a number of underwater volcanoes, and also above water volcanoes, Pagan for one, Pagan and Atahan. There's a couple of satellite images that we look at. This one is not showing much at the moment, but we're looking for hotspots. Some of the Himawari satellite imagery is especially tuned to pick up heat signatures. We use this type of imagery sometimes to look for hotspots that would be indicative of wildfires. We've seen wildfires across southern Guam, parts of Saipan, that show up as hotspots, usually temperatures corresponding to 50 to 70 degrees Celsius. That is really hot. You would not expect typical temperatures of that magnitude without some type of heat source. Just for a reference, 33 Celsius is about 88 degrees Fahrenheit. So 50 to 77, 50 to 70 Celsius, that's getting pretty hot. 100 degrees Celsius is 212 degrees Fahrenheit, that's boiling. There are a couple of the signatures that do show up on occasion. There is a perpetual hotspot in Arahan. And what we're seeing with that case when it's not cloudy like today, what we're seeing is actually the solar farm down there. The solar radiation will reflect.
We got another solar farm we're talking about?
You got the main one down in the Dandan Inarahan area. That's been there for a few years. And I have noticed a bright hotspot in the Marlborough area. that space that's been in the news recently, and apparently
once or
those
twice.
solar panels are definitely reflecting the solar rays, and it acts just like mirrors. The satellite will see that, and it will depict that as very hot surface temperatures. So we've got to be aware of that. Make sure we know what we're seeing before we say, "Hey, wildfire" or volcanic hotspot. But this week we have not seen any volcanic hotspots. It's too bad that it's been so cloudy as it has been, but there's Poggen right there in the middle, and right now just nothing shows up as out of ordinary. If the volcanic eruption, we would expect to see some very cold cloud temperatures, anomalously cold, and outside of the weather pattern. But we have not seen anything like that. And eventually, as clouds clear up and we get some of those easterly trade winds, perhaps we'll have a better and clearer view and see if there's, sometimes you might see some discoloration if belching off a little bit of steam or smoke. But we'll keep our eyes on that, and we'll keep in close contact with Saipan emergency management officials. But with that, that's all I got for weather. Any questions?
Yeah, I mean, I was just talking about, since you touched on, the whole thing about, anomalies, like earthquakes, and you said like volcanoes. If one of those things should just like say, we're all knocking on wood right now that it doesn't happen, but if an earthquake should happen like somewhere in the region and everything like that, how does that disrupt like, weather systems that you guys are already tracking, and then, you can kind of see the development and the formation of them, 3-4 days out, and then all of a sudden you've got this extreme, heat plume that comes up?
Yeah, so it's a matter of multitasking and prioritization. So in the case of, I think it was Thursday, when we had both the Alaska earthquake and tsunami threat, but also the volcano, we had to really spin into action and pull a few more forecasters onto the floor. So we usually have a couple extra forecasters working on some administrative duties, some training. In those rare cases, it's just all hands on deck. We're going to respond. We're going to be in steady communication with Guam Civil Defense, also Saipan emergency management officials, and we're collecting details, and we're going into active mode to look for any type of conditions, any signal from satellite imagery. Unfortunately, the only seismic sensor is here on Guam, and that will only detect either the closer weak earthquake shakes, these are 5, 4, 4.5 magnitude, or the much larger earthquakes anywhere around the world. And so our sensor did sense that disruption from the Alaska earthquake.
Has that ever happened before, Brandon? Like say like a volcano erupts and there happens to be like a cold front or like a pressure system coming through that area and everything like that. How do those two typically, like, polar opposite events, do they counteract each other? Do they cancel each other out, or?
Well,
or do they make one big mess?
Well, it'll make a big mess. There was a case, I think, when Anatahan had a major eruption, I think maybe in the 90s. You remember that, Paul? Anatahan's eruption? 2005. So my co-worker in the background, Paul, he was
Paul.
Here, 2005.
Good morning.
Anatahan. Jason says hi. Anatahan blew. We happened to have a typhoon, or at least a tropical storm or typhoon to the east of the Marianas. So that had induced a north wind from the far northern islands down into Saipan. And so the smoke plume, the ash plume, was steered right over Saipan. And so they had very low visibility. They had a lot of haze. You had ash depositing on the island. They had to close the airports because volcanic ash and jet engines are not suitable partners. You don't want to mix the two.
Yeah.
So that was a really interesting event. But the other thing, meteorologically, for clouds to form, you need some type of particulates in the air, whether it's dust, dirt, volcanic ash. And on these little particles, the water vapor can cling to it, condensate, and that's how you get the cloud development. We call those cloud condensation nuclei. So I guess you could say in pristine, in a vacuum pristine, no particulates in the air, you're not going to get cloud development. So you've got to have some type of pollution, some type of particulates in the air.
All right. He blinded me with science. That's fascinating, fascinating stuff. Yeah, yeah. But Brandon, if things should change and everything like that, you've got our, you're on our emergency WhatsApp chat and everything like that. You ever want to come back, all you have to do is just shoot us a note, and we'll make time for you. You've got.
Will do. Absolutely.
Hey, and best to you and your team, man. You guys are doing a good job. That's why you guys make the big bucks.
We stay busy, underslept sometimes.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Have a good dry week.
Yeah, and also your twin brother was jumping in the comments, and he said half a day watching from Arizona. The man never sleeps.
I don't think so. I think he puts his phone in auto mode, and it just kind of responds to things and comments.
Well, you guys are really, really dedicated to your craft, and we certainly appreciate that. So have a good day, man. Stay dry.
Thank you. You too.
All right.
Thank you, Brandon. Hey, that's Work Week Weather brought to you by Docomo Pacific. Are you experiencing financial hardship from the COVID-19 pandemic? You and your family may qualify for the Emergency Broadband Benefit Program, the EBB. You down with EBB? Visit Docomo Pacific's Tamuning HQ to see if you qualify to receive $50 off select internet and mobile plans. The offer is limited. Please come in today and inquire about EBB. Docomo Pacific. Better together. Good morning.
Catch the barbecue.
It's a series highlighting the wide array of talents on our island, whether they're a standout